All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Biblical Hitman, folks. My name's Steven, host of the show. And whoa, got an interesting one tonight. Going to be talking about Andrija Puharich, the latest Danny Jones podcast, airing his son, Andy Puharich. And it just circled back a lot of old information. I've covered this. I've had David Smith on the show that we got into this topic. Also, the guys from Nephilim Death Squad are one of the guys that really brought a lot of this information, at least to some of the podcast industry. That's what I remember hearing them on Tinfoil Hat talking about this kind of stuff. And folks, it's circling its way back into existence purposely, in my opinion. The stuff is all done purposely. I say that because when you see all of the information, everything that's airing on these big platforms, it's one guest going to another show and they just bounce around. It's like a lot of campaigning going on for the topic. Jesse Michaels just had another guy on his show talking about the same thing. The guy that was on Danny Jones's show, the guy who was partnering with Andy with that show, because I forget the guy's name. Someone throw his name in the comments. The guy who made the documentary, I think, of Andrea Puharich. Something like that. But hey, listen, folks, before we get into anything, let's just take care of quick business. If anyone wants to support the show, be sure to head on over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends. And the best place to support the show is on patreon.com/the biblical hitman. You can get all of your ad-free early access, direct chats, group chats over there, whatever it is you want, it's over there. And also come support the platform on audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker. We're growing pretty nicely over on Spotify. So if anyone's watching on YouTube, or if anyone's over on the Patreon, you haven't come on over to the Spotify, just be sure to come on over, hit that follow button, and leave a nice review if you care about me. But okay. Listen, we got some things to talk about tonight. There's a lot popping off here. There's a lot of things that are taking place. There's so much action going on in the podcast industry, in the realm, the information war, all kinds of stuff is happening. I think that there's just so much. Not only is there Discordianism, and there's a lot of chaos, magic being played out. There's a lot of word magic being played out by a lot of big platformers. But there is a narrative, and there is an agenda. There is an agenda that is pushing consciousness, and the whole idea of consciousness, also pushing the idea with how consciousness may be related to the soul, which, by the way, that was something that Epstein was talking about. Okay. And that he was also paying a lot of people to research for him, because he had all the monies. But there's just so much to this, right? When you study Gnosticism, you study the idea of the divine spark, which I do not consent to in any way. There might be something to it, but it is straight from the devil. It is straight from the devil, because it is pushing a human potential agenda, and it is pushing for people to start to look at themselves on how to solve things, look at themselves on how to not only solve things, but how to fix things, and how you actually may have stored potential in you, right? It's kind of like how energy functions, right? There's potential energy, right? And it seems like this is what's going on. It's really falling into this awakening agenda, and the awakening agenda is what's going to usher in a false light source, a false light a messiah, a false light new world order, a false light unity, and a false light balance. Everything's going to just come together. Timed and orchestrated. And what humanity just doesn't understand, the people of the world do not understand that they are being played. They are being led into this by a shepherd, and it is the devil himself. All right. And the thing is, this stuff is going to look magnificent. There's going to be something to it. There's going to be metaphysical sciences that can back things up in the objective side of the field, and people need to just not get involved in this. if you got something to say about it, say it. But understand that if you feel in any way seduced into giving your allegiance over to these ideas and this agenda and what's actually happening, wake up. Wake up. Ba, 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 right? Like a bunch of smacks in the face, like the cartoons we used to watch every Saturday morning growing up in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? It's like da, 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 da. Snap out of it. Okay. Come back to the Bible. Come back to the gospel of Jesus Christ. Come back to the truth. There's a counterfeit that is brewing, it is building up, and my goodness, the coffee is almost hot and ready. At least that's how I feel. But real quick, I'm just gonna slide on over to the chat. What's up? We got Still Reserved in the house. We got Yaz, Girly. What's going on? User, hey, good to see you. Jug, Kelly, Karen, Sean, JFCG. What up? What's going on? This is a fun one. This is going to be a fun show. I got some things I want to throw out there. I've talked to Dan Top Lobster, and I've talked to him, and I want to do a show with him and Raven on this subject. I'm going to just briefly give a generalized summary of a lot of the things that we're probably going to touch on again when we have them on. But those guys are good with the information, and I want to try and get them on and talk about this because this relates to so many other areas in the scientific field. Right. Julian Dory, right? Dory, is that his name? Dorian? I can't remember his name. But anyways, he just had a lady on his show, and shout out to Chris. Chris sent me over that episode. And I was watching the episode, and this lady is also pushing this kind of information, this hidden potential in people. Okay. And this is nothing more than initiating people into the occult. They are being initiated into the occult. This is fascinating stuff. You're telling me I could bend a spoon with my brain? Let's do it. No, stop it. Okay, like going back to the Bible, man. All right. But there's a lot of things that I want to talk about because not only is this stuff like uh, having some sort of chemical reaction to what humanity is believing in right now, right? With this information being added into people's perspective. But we need to understand, like, as Christians, like, bunker up. All right. Put your coat on, put your pants on, put on the word of God. Let's go. Because what this is doing is Lucifer is offering the forbidden fruit once again. He is offering the fruit once again, y'all, like 100%. And it's enticing, it's seducing, it's got a level of acceptance to it, according to humanity and just the will of humanity and the flesh. And people are just biting the bait. They're biting the bait and they're hooked onto the line here. Okay. But what is the fruit going to do in Revelation? Right? We know kind of what it did in Genesis, right? Eve ate it. Adam, right, partook in it as well, and their eyes were opened. There was a significance of consciousness that just happened there, in my opinion, because their eyes were opened. They looked down, they saw themselves that they were naked, they realized what it is that they did, and they were like, oh my goodness, we just did what the Lord just told us not to do. Oh my goodness, we have just sinned. God is a holy God. God is a righteous God. He is of no sin. Okay. And what's happening, I think, with this information, with this idea of a divine spark, accessing human potential, accessing different meditative states and lowering your intellect, increasing your intuition, and starting to follow what these white magicians are pushing in the narrative, right? To rise, right, from this evil of the world, right, this prison planet. All it is just so much. All of it is just so many different avenues, so many different angles of reversing the pre-Adamic sin. And it's being offered in with many different tools to do this stuff, right? And when you reverse the pre-Adamic sin, if that's even possible, I don't think it is, but at least the idea of it, and my mom is just over there banging dishes and banging cups and glasses and doesn't care, and that's fine. But what that's going to do is it's going to instigate and initiate people that they are their own god in some sort of way. And it's going to instigate people to start to get involved into the occult and to start doing occult practices and to start doing things that God said don't get involved in, please. Right, one thing that Andrija Puharich was known for was his studies and his advances with scientific realms of consciousness that were influenced and in some sort of way is agonist, right? It was these he was involving mushrooms, psychedelics, LSDs, all kinds of different neuropathic and psychedelic drugs that were just allowing people to operate this other realm of consciousness and to go into these other realms and then to talk and communicate with things, right? And to what are they doing there? What are they doing going into these realms, right? They're going into these realms, they're going into these astral projections, and they're getting information, and they're getting initiated even more into occult stuff, right? When you look at Freemasonry, you look at all of the different kinds of ladders that go up, to accessing higher levels of consciousness to ultimately make yourself like this Metatron status, right? To reach the heavens, right? We know who says that in the Bible, right? I will be like the Most High, right? But what I'm saying with that is, even in Kabbalah, there is a way to access little different realms to move your way up, and then to where you get to the top and you finally, reached full enlightenment. It's almost like how a way humanity has been taught to try to reverse the pre-Adamic sin. And when you look at the Tower of Babel moment in Genesis 11, you could see that they come together under one language. They come together. They say, "Hey, let us come together. Let us make brick, mortar, and let's please let's build the tower up unto the heavens." Right, and lest we be scattered, right? Lest we go back to how we used to be. I think that that's one thing that is going to be pushed with this kind of information and with these podcasts that are dropping like hot. And I'm just gonna, this is my perspective. I could be wrong. You guys can tell me all day that I'm wrong, but I have a gut feeling based off of everything that I know, that everyone I've talked to, that everything I've read out of the Bible, and everything that I've prayed about, that this is what is happening. Not only was Puharich somebody that was experimenting with psychedelics and all kinds of drugs, look at what just happened. Look at what just happened. We just got Joe Rogan, Donald Trump passing for ibogaine to be put into pharmacies so that now certain people, based off of certain criteria, can now have access to these extremely potent psychedelic drugs, right? What's this going to do? What is Alice Bailey? What is HPB, right? What does Blavatsky have to do with all this? What does Theosophy have to do with all of this? Why was Puharich very obsessed with going over to Egypt? Right? Like, why was he very obsessed with actually meditation and trying to connect to other things? And what were these things? We'll get into it, right? The Council of Nine, right? Which I've been also talking about what's known as the Law of One for a little bit now on this show, because that is the end goal, in my opinion. Connecting to divine source from humanity's perspective is the end goal that Lucifer wants humanity to get to. What's that divine source going to be? I think it has something to do with the harlot of Revelation 17. I think it has something to do with Apollyon, the eighth king. I think it has something to do with the Mahdi, the Kalki, the Mashiach. All of these different religions are looking for a teacher. They're looking for a teacher to lead them to how to achieve this. Humanity's just not good at it. I mean, not that good at it. right? Like humanity's good at it. I take that back. But humanity hasn't fully achieved full godlock, right? They haven't fully achieved it, and they can't because they can never be God. Remember, that's the lie. But they're waiting for a teacher to come along the way and to literally show them the way on how to do this. And it's happening. And it's starting with podcasts. And it's starting, well, it's not starting with podcasts, it's moving with podcasts right now, right? You got to just look at these huge platforms. They're so big, man. They're so big. There's the audience is huge. It's the collective consciousness idea. If you write it on paper and and instead of writing the numbers of these audiences down, you actually write just, kind of like a football sheet, like a football spread where you've got X's on one team and O's on the other, right? And okay, so let's say we take Danny Jones's podcast, Joe Rogan's podcast, Julian Dory's podcast, all these big hitters, right? All these big players, Jesse Michael's podcast. We got all these people, these big hitters, right? And you just draw a circle for every single one of their audience, and you draw a line connected to each circle. It's very impressive. That is almost literally like probably the entire population of probably the western side of the world, in numbers. And so this information's getting out to people like that. It's making contact, right? So I can only, at least with my audience, just try to give my perspective of what's going on, and I'm passionate about it. Obviously, you could see that. Um, but this is makes me very uneasy for people to not even be able to allow certain Christians onto these shows so that we could push back, so that we could have a conversation with some of these people and to actually set things straight a little bit, right? Because it's falling off the deep end, y'all. It's falling off the deep end, man. But you know what? It's got to happen. That's prophecy. The Lord's got to come back. The world's got to go through the seals of revelation. There's got to be the bowls of judgment. There's got to be a new heaven and a new earth. That's it. That's it. This place is crashing. And this isn't like a doomer show, right? But it's crashing. It's crashing, y'all. Oh my goodness, dude. It is. It is, but we've got airbags, we've got seatbelts on, we've got curtain airbags. All right. We've got 911 on standby. We're good, baby. We good. And we've got the Bible in the cuff right here. And we're running. We're getting through the hole. All right. That's a little bit of football terms there. So let me bring up a picture here. Let's bring up a old picture here of Mr. Andrija Puharich. His name sounds a little different than how he actually, like how his accent is. I mean, this guy was born in Chicago, right? Um, there we go. Let's bring this up here. Throw this out. Hey, that's my boy. What's up, dog? That's him. There he is. And Azoth. Does anyone even know what Azoth is? Is this a area code right here? I don't even know what's going on here. Bunch of decimal points on a blackboard, and he has a pretty killer mustache. That's back in the day, huh? That's when we had chalk and chalkboards. Long time ago, not too long ago, but within the past 100 years ago. So I got a photo of him up right here. I wanted to touch on a little bit of a little bit of the history, a little bit of the people he worked with, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. All right. Um, and so a little bit of his early life, right? Andrea Puharich, right? He was born in 1918 in Chicago. His parents were immigrants. His father was reportedly violent, right? So, and this is one thing too. I just want to say, like, when people grow up in traumatic households, where either there's not a father within the home or a mother within the home, the nuclear family is destabilized. It's really leaving a lot of open doorways for Lucifer to come in and to try to infect the child or try to lead the child astray, right? And what's so funny is a lot of people, uh I'm just let's just take Aleister Crowley for an example here, right? Aleister Crowley, he was someone that grew up in a Christian home, right? Like was more in a religious home. But the rebellion in these Christian homes for these children when they grow up is insane. And so I can only at least just say, hey, if we're parents out there and we hold true to Christian, values and morals and the framework of how to navigate and keep the integrity of a home, stay on top of it every day, right? Like for example, I was just in my living room, right? I mean, it's not my living room; it's my mom's living room, right? I'm in there, and we've got Moana playing, which I've been very highly convicted of. I mean, for a while now, and we're getting much better at Disney stuff. We're getting much better at slowly starting to wean those things out of my little 2-year-old's life because, real quick, I peep at the Moana movie, right? I mean, the graphics are pretty cool, right? So I'm looking at it, and I immediately see Moana and Maui are on the abode in Egypt, right? Which is where pretty much. And by the way, they were under the sea in this astral realm, which is the underworld. And so I looked at that and I was like, wow, this is the occult. And I just immediately took it off. I'm done with it. The occult is everywhere in our world today, and we got to really protect the little ones. Got to protect the little ones. Got to protect them. Even if people don't agree with you, I don't care. Like, let's go. Anyways, little side segment. Done with that, right? And we've got Disney tickets, right? Like I get it. Like we're season pass holders and all this stuff. It's tough. But pray for me, pray for my family on that stuff. I mean, we're working through it. Little by little, little by little. So anyway, some early interest, right, with Andrea Puharich was he was very fascinated with consciousness. He was very fascinated with the mind, how the mind works. He was very fascinated with psychology, and he was very fascinated with the soul. So, with this, he started to kind of go into experimentation with what he called and what others did as well as is known as ESP, right? Extrasensory perception. And as a child, he had a formative experience, right, with a German Shepherd while delivering milk, right? To where he attempted to calm the dog, right, using only his mind, and he believed it worked. Now, how many times have we seen something like that in movies? We have seen things like that in movies where there's this person who is just a little off. There's something a little off about them. Maybe they're just a little too quiet in the middle of the movie, right? But they've all of a sudden they show that they've got these superpowers, of the mind of some sort of way, and they're actually able to connect more with nature more than anything. Animals being a part of that nature, and other things like that, right? But when he was going through this experience, right, it sparked his lifelong interest, right, in what he known as ESP. And he got really into psychic communication, right? Psychic communication is things like telepathy, things like psychokinesis or something like that. Also, just kind of mind speak, right? Right, like things that are just not objective, right? You can't, what I mean by that is you can't, you don't know how to prove it, right? Like there is no way to measure it. There is no way to scale it. And there is no way for science to be able to duplicate something like that based off of the data that they're trying to retrieve from it. Like that's how science works. They study something, they see how it works, then they make it themselves, then they get the data from it, and now it becomes an algorithm to where they can just punch a code and boom, we can now do it again over and over and over again. And now that code can actually help increase other technology because now it's helping another code, and then boom, 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 boom. Technology is nothing more than kind of like how the mind works with neurons. where one neuron and with entanglement and all of this, if you entangle technology, it just increases not only the advancement in technology, but it increases the sufficiency, and it also increases just how in general things work with technology. Um, so in his education, he also had like military connections, right? So he attended Northwestern University. He studied pre-med and philosophy over there. Philosophy is a very interesting topic. Philosophy is something that hey, we're 50th. We're 50th on Spotify, by the way, in philosophy. Praise the Lord. Let's go. Philosophy is basically kind of like something that may fall under teachings, right? Just how someone can justify how something works and breaks it down and teaches other people about it. So there's many different philosophers out there, and he served as an active member, right, of the Army Medical Corps during World War II. He studied medicine using Army funding, and that's a big thing too, right? When you're in school or with military, they pay for everything. They pay for your food, your housing, your clothes. They pay for pretty much everything. And since they pay for pretty much everything, also like education, they don't really pay you a lot of money. There's kind of like a balance with that kind of stuff. At least that's just what I've heard from people in the military. It could be wrong. Maybe what I'm saying is just a complete lie. He married a woman who worked for the Office of War Information, which is known as OSS, and he had early connections formed with military and intelligence circles. His medical career and his research had various things with it, and he completed his residency at Kaiser Permanente Research Institute in Santa Barbara. He also studied effects of drugs and how these drugs, you know, worked with the human brain. And that's why I think he really kind of got into that side of psychedelics and getting into other things that would help access certain areas of the brain to connect more to spiritual things. Because I think he, at the end of the day, Puharich really wanted to try and find the answers to a lot of mysteries. He wanted to understand a lot about just the world and the fabric of it. He just wanted to kind of really understand how things at the end of the day worked. And in my opinion, there's scientists out there that try to do the same thing, but he would probably fall more under the mysticism side, the esoteric side, the non-mainstream side. Now, this kind of gets into to where his son was just on Danny Jones's podcast, and when they were talking on the podcast, basically Andy, his son, was saying that his father's research was so deep, right, that he even thinks that the CIA and other three-letter agencies were onto him and were, if anything, probably harassing him in ways that were you just couldn't prove, right? One of these things was, for example, their home burning down or something like this, and just little scare tactics, most likely. But that, and we know that that's part of a narrative too, right? That's part of this. That's part of that. The government is hiding this information. That's part of that. The government is part of this prison planet system, probably most likely getting manipulated by non-human intelligences that are evil, and ultimately, humanity needs to rise out of that stuff. Because from the Gnostic perspective, that's exactly what I see. I see that it's literally just with the alien narrative. I think it's coming down to two areas here. It's archons versus aeons, right? It's like it's bad versus good. But stop getting tunnel vision that the bad are the bad and the good are the good. They're all umbrellaed under Satan. Like Lucifer's nature is of good and of evil, and he is the master of it all. He will be like the Most High, he says. He says, even the Bible says that even Lucifer can masquerade like an angel of light, and so don't his ministers preaching righteousness. What? I thought these were bad guys. I thought this was the pentagram. I thought this was Satanism. I thought that this was like the cabal. I thought this was, the evil forces doing satanic rituals and all this. What? You're telling me it's good? That don't make sense, Stephen. No, it does. Just read Alice Bailey's work, right? Go read, neo New Agers and what they think about this stuff. They are pushing a righteous side of this movement. And I think that's why a lot of this information is getting out there, so that because they know that it's going to instigate something in humanity to go towards the white hat philosophies, right? The sons of the law of one. And at the end of the day, I think at some point, this narrative that's happening in front of us, it's all contributing to an Atlantean narrative. Jesus said that in the days of Noah, so will it be when the coming of the Son of Man comes. So if the days of Noah were in the antediluvian period, which today humanity kind of talks about a catastrophe that happened, just catastrophe that's happened throughout all the cultures, all the different ethnic groups, all the different tongues and nations around the world talk about a global flood. And so there is some idea, right, that the world had some sort of suffering and some sort of catastrophe that happened. And they say that that's what destroyed the old world. So if that was the antediluvian period, we know that that was of Noah's time. And if Jesus is saying that if the days of the coming of Son of Man are like the days of Noah, so we're seeing the Atlantis narrative coming back around again purposely, in my opinion, because that has to happen. That's prophecy. I think I saw my boy in here. What up, Doc? There he is. What's up, man? What's going on? Good to see you. And yeah, tell John to text me back. He doesn't like to text me, I guess. But shout out to you guys. Appreciate you. Yeah. So that's what I think is also happening here. And I think humanity is just kind of falling into this agenda that ultimately Lucifer is in full control of, right? He is the one, he is the right, Satan, the dragon that takes a third of the angels with him out of heaven. He's got some sort of authority to wrap them with his tail and to draw them out. Yes, they agree to him. Yeah, they agree to Satan's philosophies. They agree and probably look at him to be king. Um, so they're all going to play their part. There's a hierarchical system in that side of the force. Okay, that's funny. I just threw a Star Wars thing out there. So Puharich became back to the medical career and the research stuff. He became very interested, like I said earlier, into consciousness, into the biological basis of it, right? Into how this works. And when I started to get into the Epstein files, I started to pick apart what is known as dark brain, because dark brain was something that was on the blackboard of Epstein's library on Epstein's Island. And there's a lot of significance to what dark brain means. There's a lot of significance to why Axiom of Maria was right underneath it. And there's another reason why time delay was right underneath that as well. The three actually work together in unison to try and map out consciousness. Okay. And when I would watch, which I'm going on William Ramsey's show later this week, and I'm excited to go on to it because we're going to talk about the Epstein files, and we're going to talk about the Steve Bannon interview that he did that got dropped after the files got dropped, right? This was all kind of part of this manufactured dump of information for humanity to think, oh, wow, look at how the world is. Oh, gosh. All part of the false awakening agenda here. But in there, you have Epstein talking about that. He even talks about the dark matter of the brain, which that's what he meant by dark brain. He says that he believes that that's where the soul is. And the processes of the dark brain are pretty much the unconscious and the subconscious aspects of how your brain functions. You've got two hemispheres, right, of your brain that work differently, and that's why you also can see too in these CIA documents that get dumped, right, one of them being the gateway process, talking about hemisync technology to put yourself into these meditative states, to ascend consciously and to connect to certain things. Like, they want, at the end of the day, it's all about connecting to non-human intelligence and to get information and to come back here and to try and enlighten mankind, so that, I think, for these things, when they come back, humanity is already consciously ready for accepting them, and accepting them most likely as their Christ. I think this is where Alice Bailey's externalization of the hierarchy comes into play. I think this is where in Matthew 24 we can clearly see that many false Christs and false prophets will rise. Okay, so this stuff is going to start happening. There will be multiple and many teachers in these Christ-like forms coming and trying to lead humanity down a road to hell. So, you know, the Puharich was known too for some of the theories that he had, right? And he proposed many different things. He proposed that the brain and the nervous system operate through energy flows between cells, right? And that this cell energy, which he called dynamics, exists in all living beings. Here we go, the life force energy, right? Buddhism and Hinduism's actually speak about, well, mostly Buddhist, but it's also kind of a different term. It's more of prana and chi in some of these different areas. But this is coming into that same concept of life force energy, that this is what you have to play with in order to kind of find your divine spark and to activate it, right? And when you activate these things, you activate that divine spark, boom, you're able to do crazy things. You could bend a spoon in half. You can curl the tips of a fork, right? You can split a tree with your mind. You can actually fractionalize a piece of paper into many different pieces like a shredder. I've seen it. I've seen videos of it. Could be fake, could be a lie. But at least, I mean, they're pushing this stuff, right? Um and so pretty much, this energy, right, likely exists on the electromagnetic spectrum, but is not yet measurable. Now, the electromagnetic spectrum actually has colors as well, which I think Alice Bailey's seven rays kind of may connect to this. That's kind of like my little theory. That's what my intuition's telling me a little bit, just from based off of the information. I think that, when you look at the Denver airport murals, you see the rainbow. When you get into the goddess, you see the rainbow. You see all these different, frequencies of colors throughout the electromagnetic spectrum, and they make a rainbow. And so this could be something that the devil counterfeits in his end time, to maybe by some sort of promise, right? Who knows if there's a promise when people are getting or offered the mark of the beast? Who knows exactly? We really just don't know, but let's just go to scripture and just stick with scripture. But I do think that there's other things that may be playing into this. How else would you, I mean, who else would just worship an idol, worship the beast? Yeah, you could probably do it in fear of your life, right? So that you could not, you take this mark so you could live and pay for things. But I think there's a catch. There's always a catch, right? There's always a catch. The serpent did the same thing to Eve. He didn't just hold his hand out with the fruit and say, "Hey, here you go." There's something there. There's some sort of, you know, understanding through whatever forms of communication it will take. There's some sort of understanding that's going to happen, where people are going to go, "Yeah, let's do this." Right? This is going to be a good decision, but ultimately, it's not. It's going to take you down to the pits of hell. Right? Um, so he had, he had influence on people. There was people that also had influence on him. He lectured at Harvard and Yale many times, and a lot of interesting people would sit in on his lectures. He would lecture about electromagnetic properties of the brain, right? He would lecture on consciousness and ESP, extrasensory perception, right? Extrasensory perception, a good way to dumb that down is pretty much like this a sixth sense, right? It's something that just we don't know, we can't access this, that. But once we can maybe access it better in natural places, right? Like we can go to natural places with no EMF radiation, no electromagnetic radiation, none of this stuff, no cell phones, no lights, no cameras, no nothing, no Teslas, no vehicles, no exhaust, no dirty water, all these things, right? Which humanity's kind of waking up to, right? Because of all the massive dump that there's chemtrails in the air, there's fluoride in the water, there's all this crap everywhere that's killing us, right? Um, that's all part of this. That's all part of this agenda because they say, right, those that are in the occult and practice this stuff, they say that literally you go out into these areas, these remote areas, and you get with nature, you can actually start to kind of pick up on how to activate this sixth sense. Um, he's suggested as well, right? Puharich has also suggested that ESP and psychic abilities access an unseen informational field. This informational field is what I believe to be many different things. One of these things is the Akashic records, another thing is the astral realm, and the other thing is just don't do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't do it anymore. Stop. Um, Stop it, Andrea. Is that how you say his name? I don't know. It's hard. Anyways, he had some wealthy patrons. He had some funding as he went, right? And there was quite a few people that liked his work, liked how he showed a lot of focus into what it is he wanted to study and what he did study. The Balkovics, right, were one of them. Alice Astor Bouverie was another, who's pretty much the daughter of the Titanic victim, John Jacob Astor. Very rich people. Here's another name you might know. The last part of it, Marcella Dupont. Right, Marcella Dupont is someone who, as well, wanted to try and fund him for his research and to try and accelerate and to try and move forward with the program that he was fascinated with. Alice Astor, right? She helped him fund a lab for ESP research. These patrons, they shared a strong interest in psychic phenomenon as well. That's why they liked doing this stuff. You look at some of these names and you can connect these names to some of these bigger people, and then these bigger people get connected to these bigger families, and these bigger families go up the chain, dude. And then they're like, oh, these are the people that own the banks. I get it now. Or these are the people that are the ones owning the owners of the banks. Who knows if these are people part of like the families of the world that ultimately have their little puppeteer strings controlling everything. It's interesting, right? Another thing to talk about is the Round Table Foundation, and this was formed with elite backers, right, to study ESP. This was attracted attention from the U.S. Navy, Department of Energy, intelligence agencies, on and on and on. Additional members included Ruth Forbes Young and Arthur Young. Right, these were the Bell helicopter inventors, by the way. Henry Belk, Henry Cabot Payne, and Francis Payne Bolton. Jack Hayes, Hammond Jr., the developer of the Navy torpedo tech. I'm telling you, this stuff is fallen angel tech. Like all these things that humanity has in their fingertips right now has come from these realms, right? That not only Puharich was very interested in and probably dabbled in quite a bit. This is where they're getting these downloads from. You look at some of these inventors, you look at some of these people that have come up with this technology and how they really, at the end of the day, admit to how they did it is either from dreams, intuition, mind speak. I mean, probably taking drugs, doing trips, and seeing certain things, getting the idea. Because how it works, right, is if you can't imagine something, you can't make it. If you don't know what a pencil ultimately looks like, you can't make it. You can make, there's a process of how to do these things, which maybe, let's say you create the back end of a pencil and you're like, how can I make this better? So then you start to create the middle part of it and you're like, how can I make this better? Okay, I'll create the tip of it, right? And then ultimately you've fully created a pencil in multiple segments. It can work like that. But to get an idea of to just come out and to just create free energy like Tesla wanted to try and do, that, my friend, is of the occult. And this is tapping into other pieces of knowledge that we can't see into these realms where I think demonic forces and fallen angels and Lucifer and Satan himself can literally give an illusion to you or can give you very interesting information, maybe images, to then where it kind of gets you to try and recreate these things yourself, and it becomes a troubleshooting scenario from then until you're successful at it, right? So Puharich did a lot of ESP experiments, right? So he built a lab to test psychic abilities. He used a Faraday cage to isolate subjects. Now, in the interview with Danny Jones and Andy Puharich, Andy Puharich literally is, like I said, he's the son of Andrija, right? And he was saying how he would go into his father's Faraday cages. Like he would go into these Faraday cage. First of all, if you want to protect your cell phone from some sort of blackout or from some sort of I don't know, hacking or something, like to where they can shut your phone down, right? Electromagnetic EMPs, right? Things like this. You put it in a Faraday bag. There's a lot of Faraday bags out there. Me as a prepper, I have a Faraday bag, and it's ultimately got copper, aluminum, and all these different elements of metal, and it's to restrict any outside electromagnetic forces or anything that really electronics today give off. Obviously, there's a lot of things that the sun gives off on its own, but the things that we have in front of us, my Mac cube here, my computer here, my camera there, the microphone here, my lighting up there, these things give off some sort of electromagnetics to where it can disrupt certain fields, right? And I think that Puharich, he was like, hey, let's try to figure out how we can ascend consciously, how we can ascend to be like gods. And the one thing that's inhibiting this from happening is all of these things that are around us. So let's create a room, let's create a Faraday cage, let's go in it. And this, it has like the same idea of extrasensory deprivation, I think, right? Or just sensory deprivation, I think is what it's called. These sensory deprivation tanks, you go in there and there's just nothing, there's nothing affecting you. So his son would say, even said on Danny Jones's podcast, that basically he would go in his dad's Faraday cages, and now a lot of people would feel uneasy, right? A lot of people would go into these Faraday cages and they would not feel good. They would feel like something was off and probably very anxious. Now, what Andy was saying is that it didn't affect him much in that way, because when he was in those cages, he went more into meditation, and in these states of meditation, he felt like these Faraday cages helped increase and heighten his senses to allow him to go deeper into meditative states. And really, I think that that is what those things are for. They're for meditation. They're for going and talking with other entities. They're for going and actually coming out of your body, out of body experiences, astral projection, and all these occult practices, to go and to get further knowledge, or to even have conversations with, like the Council of Nine, for example. And we'll get into the Council of Nine and how that connects to the Law of One, because ultimately it's like nine in one, which is very funny. And so basically that's kind of like where he was getting at with his ESP experiments, right? And also how uh you know the person that's in the middle of these experiences, how they can increase their telepathic or these extrasensory perceptive um abilities that they would be way more heightened in these Faraday cages. Like if you could, for example, remember the movie or the show Stranger Things, right? Stranger Things is another one of these shows that's built off of like not only the Montauk Project, not only like the Gateway Process, and all these other things that are connected to Puharich in some sort of way, but they're in these like solitary confinement rooms, and that's kind of alluding to a Faraday cage. Okay, so you know, he claimed psychic abilities were increased, right? Like under these conditions, and that, interest from the Pentagon continued to grow upon his research, and people started to become very interested in what it is he was doing. The three-letter agencies they've always been obsessed with the occult. They've always been obsessed with using people and exploiting them for their capabilities and for their science and their advancements. Because they're like an Epstein figure. They've got all the money in the world to pay for these things. And they're the ones in the military uniform coats, and they got their bugles, and they're just standing behind the double weighted mirror watching these things happen, right? Because they ultimately, I think, that how can we use this in a military, perspective? Puharich also says that possibility deeper intelligence involvement was also associated with trying to, um, figure out his research and all of this kind of stuff. He had base. This is another thing that he was really known for, right? The encounter with the nine. Really how this kind of all started was Puharich would go on to different areas of the world. He's a researcher, right? He's not only a researcher, he's a scientist, but he's not only a scientist, but he's in some sort of way an occult journalist. So he's going out and he's trying to figure out what these other Eastern religions, Egyptian religions. What are these ancient civilizations? What did they know? What did they do? Right. And I even think that we see people today doing the same thing, like Randall Carlson, Graham Hancock, Billy Carson. Right. We can see these people doing the same things. But, Puharich met with the Indian mystic Dr. Vinod, right, at a party hosted by Eileen Garrett. Vinod reportedly demonstrated psychic abilities by recounting Puharich's life. Now, that there is interesting because, again, this is back in the day, no internet, cell phone use, not there yet. The information age was not a thing, right? The interconnectedness of humanity was not a thing. So that's something that stands out to somebody is when you walked, let's say 80, 90, 100 years ago, we're walking around and a guy stops you in the middle of the road in another country, thousands of miles away from where you grew up and where you've lived your whole entire life. And they look at you and they go, "Hey, I know what you did last summer." And then they tell you, and you're like, "Whoa, dude, you're honest. You got to be, where are you getting that information from?" Pretty much, right? So Puharich was very interested in this Vinod gentleman, right? This Indian mystic, right? And so he brought Vinod, right, to the Round Table Foundation. And they did many channeling sessions, right? Vinod entered a trance and states that he began channeling the nine. And the nine were described as extraterrestrial or higher dimensional entities, right? Demons. We're just gonna grandma max this, dude, because I demons, right? Like, what did Jesus do in his ministry? He casted these things out of people, demons or legion, whatever it is you want to call them. You could call them either or. So you know, basically the nine are supposedly linked to the Egyptian Ennead, or what is known as the nine gods of Egypt, existing. And so basically where they exist is outside space and time. Now, interdimensional means within spaces, right? And if anyone has seen the ending of not the newest Indiana Jones movie, but the one that was before that, where the aliens are at the end and the spaceship, the UFO blasts off, right? Like a bolt of lightning. Um, that to me kind of resembles what the nine is, right? These ancient gods that ultimately work together as one. That's where the law of one comes in, the raw material. The raw material came from, not only like people like David Wilcock pushing this kind of Gnostic agenda, but also from a lot of these channelings too, from the 80s and the 90s and all these things, for the raw material, like raw in RA, right? Um, and so in that movie, in the Indiana Jones movie, the crystal skull is what it's called, right? And so they put the crystal skull is basically this alien head, elongated, huge, and weird, right? I mean, we've seen elongated skulls and just giant tribes and other ancient civilizations of Peru and all these other areas, right? Okay, okay, okay. Now I understand that there's a way to do this when a child is born and they're very young. You can actually do this. You can actually like manipulate the cartilage of the skull at a young age to where you can elongate the skull. But whatever, let's just say these ancient civilizations saw these entities and they appeared like this. It's not what they actually look like, it's the illusion, but they wanted to kind of copy it because they want it to be like them. um, so in this movie, they put the crystal skull onto this alien crystal skeleton. There's like, I counted them last night, there's 11 of them, right? Um, and when the lady, the Nazi lady, right, she put the crystal skull on the skeleton, it magnetically connected to the spine, and it like raised up in the chair, and it was like alive again, right? And it was the last piece that was needed for the interdimensional beings to go home or to go back to where they came from. And what's interesting about that is I think that there's an Osiris ritual, a part of that movie there, where it's kind of like the missing phallus, right? It's the missing thing that Semiramis or Isis, right, could not find. It's Isis in that mythology. I just said Semiramis because it just I can go all day with the mother goddess of all the different cultures, but Isis couldn't find the phallus, right? So this is a missing piece. But that missing piece would make Osiris whole again. So, anyways, in the movie, she connects the skull to the alien. Alien becomes alive, right? And the ship starts activating. And as it's starting to activate, everywhere around the people is starting to crumble, and they're actually running out of this spaceship in this whole scene. So Indiana Jones, everybody run out of the spaceship. Nazi lady's still there. She's like, I want to know. I want to know. I want to see. I want to know the mysteries of the universe, right? I want to be initiated. Come on. And so what happens is each one of these skull aliens, like these crystal bodied, crystal skulled aliens, there's like I said, there was like 11 or 12 of them or whatever. They all started going around in a circle, right? They're all seated in a throne and they're going around in a circle, and one would start to go into the other, and they all at the end of the cycle, they all were one. They were all one entity, one source, and all that kind of stuff. Huge segue, but I found that interesting when I saw that in the movie. I was like, dude, that's the law of one. If anything, that's kind of like what the Council of Nine is talking about, where they are kind of one, but they have nine different sections to govern humanity. And when you look into Gnosticism and what the aeons are, the aeons kind of look like the same thing. There's multiple of them, but they're ultimately to guide your path to ascension. And it's wild. I'm just making some fun connections here, right? Don't kill me. Um, so basically, Vinod, right? The Indian guy, the Indian mystic that Puharich came across and actually was very obsessed with in some sort of way. Vinod said as well that these Council of Nine, that they're living in massive invisible craft above the earth, right? So they're like these watchers. They're like these guardians for humanity. Now, I've covered realism. I've covered realism on this show, and it kind of sounds like the same thing. Realism, Yahweh and his colleague of aliens, pretty much known as the Elohim, are waiting for humanity to consciously ascend themselves, or what is known today as what I call the manufactured Great Awakening. Are we seeing why that Great Awakening is trying to be pushed on humanity by the demonizing of the New World Order, by the demonizing of the deep state, the demonizing of the cabal, all this stuff? It's because they want humanity to rise out and away from how the state of the world is right now. So when they come back, it's all done. I mean, they got you. They got you hook, line, sinker. Um, there's many different topics, right? Discussed by the nine. ESP and psychokinesis is one of them. Teleportation and alchemy is another thing. Also, Einstein and physics, Jesus and spirituality, and atomic weapons and cosmic rays. Right now, the narrative with the atomic weapons, which is pretty much like uh, nuclear weapons that we have today, that's to push humanity to go, hey, we should not, we have the technology to destroy ourselves, so we need to rise, right? So that we don't do this to ourselves like we once did. Because in the Atlantean mysteries, that's what even Casey says. He's like, yeah, it was the Belial group that caused the destruction, that caused that catastrophe, that caused that global flood. And that's a lie. Okay. That's an illusion that he got from the Akashic records. That's demonically possessed influence right there. Okay. What actually happened was a flood. The windows of heaven opened up, the waters from the deep bursted, and every mountain was moved out of its place. God destroyed everything. And this is why it's kind of, this is why the worldly narrative is pushing that in the same way. It's like, oh, Enlil. It was the jealous Enlil that decided to destroy mankind in those times. It's all this effery, man. Like it's so it's wild, but Satan is very, very tactical with how he's doing all of this, with how he's planted all of these little seeds throughout all the cultures and civilizations from thousands and thousands of years ago to even where we are today. It's all coming together for his goals and for his agenda, where he wants humanity to go. And where he wants humanity to go at the end of the day is because he wants humanity to accept him as God. And that's even wild to say and to think of. So that's what basically the nine talked about. You know, there's been some government work, right, that Puharich was involved in outside of the nine. And after these events, Puharich worked with the CIA, the Department of Defense. He focused on esoteric research. He focused on hallucinogens and consciousness. How the nine influenced Puharich and his legacy was that it became the central of his work. It became pretty much what he focused most of his work around. It influenced him so much that he pretty much kind of worked with people that were a part of the early UFO culture in the 1950s. Even people like Alice Bailey, even, right? I'm sure Alice Bailey kind of heard of Puharich, where the New Age movement started to kind of come out and just even to where we're at today, these people have had great influence. And the nine has had great influence of where the New Age, the New Age, Neo Theosophy, all these things, where they're at in the state of today. That also helped shape narratives around, right? Extraterrestrial intelligence. 1947 New Mexico Roswell thing. Even the fact that what we're hearing today, nothing's changed in the past 100 years from when these things first started. And I don't think they first started 100 years ago. I think it's been something all the way back to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, man. Okay. Talking about forces here that are other parts of creation, right? Angelic forces that have the power to influence humanity. We're kind of like the rats in the maze in the experiment. Okay. Also this helped shape, psychic phenomenon. This helped shape consciousness research. Okay. I want to play a clip here. We're gonna play a clip here of the Danny Jones podcast. Shout out Danny. I get me on your show, brother. All right, I would love to come on your show and kind of just get this right here. You know, and that's the thing. Everyone wants receipts of this stuff. Everyone wants receipts, man. Just understand it comes down to two roads: the road to life, and it's narrow, and the road to destruction, and it's wide. Full stop. Okay. Full stop. So, what I want to play here is apart from the show where it talks about the sacred mushrooms and the psychedelic experiments. This gentleman right here is Andrija Puharich's son, Andy Puharich. And we'll hear what he has to say about his father and some of the experiments he ran and his philosophies and his father's philosophies and Danny Jones's philosophies of how sacred mushrooms can contribute to connecting with other entities and also elevating your consciousness to make you like God. And they don't say that. They don't like to say that because it gets a lot of terrible feedback. But this is what they want to do. Let's run it.
Didn't you write a book about the sacred mushroom?
Yep.
Yes.
Was that when he went to Mexico?
Actually, yeah. Here, look.
Yeah, this was recently republished.
Yeah, both of these.
So it's kind of interesting.
Look at that.
Yeah. I brought only the cover because I was trying to travel lightly.
The sacred mushroom, the key to the door of eternity.
See, and that was in, what is it, 59 when he published that, I think, originally. And so that was one of his initial investigations into the paranormal.
59, you said?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
59, yeah.
50.
But it was written in throughout
So
the
this
50s.
was before John Allegro's sacred mushroom book, I think.
Yeah. I think we talked
This was
about
very
We
early
did talk
on.
about this, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
He
because he
was-
did all the research for it like earlier. And I think it just happened that 59 was the year it was published.
Right.
Yeah.
In The Sacred Mushroom, Andrea Puharich takes us on an extraordinary journey into the realm where ancient whispers intertwine with the pulse of modern exploration. The Amanita Muscaria, mysterious and powerful, a gateway to the unseen, reveals its long-veiled truths through his words, weaving past through luminous corridors of consciousness and awakening. Wild. So
The story.
Okay, so you heard it right there. You heard it right there. He's literally reading something of the book, right? Because Andy gave him over this little pamphlet, pretty much of like a seller for the book. Okay, come on now, we know what it is, Andy. All right. Let's go back and just hear exactly what he just said.
intertwine with the pulse of modern exploration. The Amanita Muscaria, mysterious and powerful, a gateway to the unseen, reveals its long-veiled truths through his words, weaving past through luminous corridors of consciousness and awakening.
Awakening. There it is. This is what they want humanity to push themselves. It's a manufactured awakening through information. The world right now is being initiated into the occult. Like all of this hidden information, this hidden knowledge, all this information about chemtrails, bad water, the government's controlling Bill Gates, Neuralink, Palantir, Peter Thiel. All of this stuff is literally manufacturing humanity to awaken from this process. Okay. It's setting something up for humanity to kind of take on themselves, right? And what do you think revolutions are? Revolutions are when humanity gets word that their governments have been doing the naughty. Okay, they've been doing what the opposite of what they said they're doing, and they revolt. So it's kind of like in the same way, but in an enlightening, awakening format. And with mushrooms and all the drugs that are legal on the street right now, it's only going to start to imply that into people even more. It's going to insert it into their hearts more. And this is why I call it Tower Babel 2.0. They're going to say, let us come together as one, and lest we be scattered, lest how we went back to lest how things were with the New World Order. We need a New Age world order out of the New World Order. Let's build us a tower and make us like gods, or we be controlled by the ones that want to be gods themselves, live on Elysium, and keep us poor. That's what's happening.
Wild.
So the story behind this is he was doing trance work with certain psychics, and there was this one psychic called, was it Peter Herkus or was it Harry Stone?
Harry Stone.
So he started channeling and writing hieroglyphs suddenly, and my dad, of course, didn't really know what was being written, so he started studying ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, and it turned out he was talking about this mushroom as a way to open up people to become more perceptive.
Yeah.
So that's basically when he got interested in the mushroom and did a lot of research into that. Went out to find. There's a lot of footage on that as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
And
footage.
Yeah, my dad made all these. He went to Mexico to film. What was it? Rites being conducted by Brujas with this mushroom, where the donkey was stolen from, and they wanted to find out who did it. Basic stuff like that. So they did this ceremony, and and then the Bruja said, "It's that guy, and the donkey's over there."
Wow.
Yeah, crazy stuff. But that's all on film. It's really old school, but it's very cool.
So how much did he start experimenting with psychedelics after this?
Well, I think even before around the same time as the mushroom, I know he was involved in early LSD stuff as well.
Was he connected to John Lilly?
Yes. In fact, John Lilly's the guy who does all the experiments with dolphins and communication with dolphins, and I know Andrea was interested in that too. But yeah, they were very close colleagues. Yeah. In fact, Puharich told some story about how I guess
so dolphins have these certain abilities, right? I even think they use ultrasound or something. What is it? What abilities do dolphins have? Let's look that up real quick, right? What abilities do dolphin have? The dolphin, right? So dolphins possess remarkable abilities, including advanced echo cancellation for navigation and hunting, high-level intelligence, and self-awareness. Wow, self-awareness is an occult buzzword, by the way. Not that the dolphins are occultists, okay? It's the studying of the dolphins by occultists, okay? To figure out how they can kind of make themselves like the dolphin, okay? That they're also complex communications using unique signature whistles, and according to whale scientists, exponentially rapid wound healing. Aha. Interesting. Wanted to kind of throw that in there. All right, let's continue with this. We'll let this play out a little bit because I found it interesting. Wanted to share it with y'all.
Billy's later life, he had some manic episode, and Puharich went and tried to help him and everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they were very close. Yeah.
Yeah, he was on what, ketamine, I think it was, maybe.
Yeah,
something. But he thought he was talking to aliens and shit.
Yeah,
completely.
Yeah.
By the way, ketamine is something that you can go and get a ketamine drip now. You can go to clinics and get this now. Dude, this is pushing Theosophy, Ilana Blavatsky's sixth root race. Technically, Blavatsky believed that in her time period, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that they were in what was known as the fifth root race. She said that in a time in the future will come when humanity starts to transition into this sixth root race, just an evolution of mankind, where they will become more intuitive and they'll become more involved with, conscious abilities. And these drugs only assist to this stuff happening. I mean, if anything, it's giving us that extra push through the doorway into the sixth root race. So it's wild.
Lost it.
Yeah.
NASA funded John Lilly to figure out like interspecies communication.
Yeah.
And John Lilly was like, you know, cutting open the heads of dolphins and like experimenting on their brains and shit. Like putting
really
probes in their brains, trying to figure out like telepathy and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a good film about him. It's all about this woman who was working in his lab with the dolphins at the time. It's like the first time she's ever spoken about it, and it came out
Is this
years
the lady
ago.
that was fucking the dolphin?
Yeah, I think
I saw this one.
I think it was.
Yeah, the dolphin lived in the house with her.
Yeah.
She like filled it with water.
Yeah.
That's crazy documentary, dude.
Yeah. But I think to answer your question, yeah, he was involved. I don't know how deeply, but he definitely talks about in lectures about how the first time they started experimenting with LSD, he was involved with that. And he named.
That was in his army days too. Yeah. I must not forget that he was put into an army division where they were doing research into drugs that could enhance soldiers' abilities, and they were experimenting with all kinds of stuff. So my dad was put obviously on that specific detail, and I have these booklets at home, order forms with marijuana, cocaine on it, and he could just check a list to order all these drugs for his experiments. That's crazy stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, Army Chemical Center. He was stationed there for a long time in the 50s. Yeah.
And so he was ordering all these drugs for what was the purpose of it?
Well, I mean, it was for the military. So obviously they didn't want to turn their soldiers into hippies. They wanted to turn them into, you know,
they didn't want to become anti-war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were doing all these experiments. What's that movie with, I forget the name of it, where they're experimenting on doing all these experiments on people and trying to make them psychic. What's the name of that film?
The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yeah, Man Who Stare at Goats, right? Yeah.
See, again, it's more of like it's more of the predictive programming coming alive, right? It's more of us actually hearing it from others that Hollywood puts these things in front of us because it's what has already happened, right? It's hard to really make things if you don't know, if you haven't had an imagination of it yet. So I do think a lot of these CIA deep operative, you know, events in these programs, they're turned into movies, right? They are at some point turned into movies. You know, real quick, one of the things as well is you know, one of the operations that's known as Project Artichoke, right? So Project Artichoke is something that came out in the early 50s. It was a secret US intelligence program run by the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence. It grew out of the earlier efforts like Bluebird and later fed into more famous projects known as Project MK Ultra. Okay, so Puharich and his work had a lot of influence on these things. Okay. And what's very fascinating about this is that there was a lot of experiments that were done in each one of these projects, right? People are more familiar with MK Ultra, right? Like for example, in the movie The Bourne Identity. The Bourne Identity is an MK Ultra movie, right? Because even who does he go after once he self-realizes and finds that divine spark and comes back to his memory and knows who he is? Somewhat of like a Gnostic film, somewhat. He's going after the CIA, and the CIA is like trying to like get him as well because he came from a CIA program. So some things that were done in Project Artichoke, right? Like I said, there was a lot of experiments done through this. Obviously, Bluebird was the beginning of Artichoke, and here's the thing: these programs get developed because the information of another program gets into the hands of someone else, and then they come and they say, "Hey, I can do this better. Let me come up with Artichoke," right? And then when someone else is like, I want to be a little bit more, evil, right? I want to be a little bit more sinister with it. It gets into someone else's hands, and then it becomes MK Ultra, right? And they start creating Manchurian candidates, and then they start freaking psyoping people and literally using them as assassins, like Born Identity. So hypnosis was one of these experiments, right? That was highly done in Project Artichoke. It was done by inducing people into trance states, right? Almost kind of like inducing these people through, technological ways, by using science and other mechanics to flip the switch into people. One person can do it on their own by pure meditation in some sort of way, or if you're some sort of clairvoyant like Rudolf Steiner, uh, Blavatsky, or even Edgar Casey, then you have these abilities to do it on your own. If anything, they want to take you and recruit you into their program ignorantly for the most part, and try and learn from you and see how you can do it on your own. But they were creating amnesia barriers, right? They were testing if subjects could be programmed to carry out actions. They used drugs doing these things in Project Artichoke, especially LSD. They used these things as truth serums. They used it to disorient people, to try and come up also with like techniques to try and disorient people and to fracture the mind in some sort of way. Also, breaking down resistance during interrogation, right? There was psychological conditioning that also took place, right? Isolation, sleep deprivation, repetition, and suggestion. Also, they combined these methods ultimately by using drugs, hypnosis, and sensory manipulation. And there's many attempts at creating what's a good, like, programmable um agents, I guess, like programmable assets, right? Like you can now use these people in the field, in the world, um to accomplish a certain goal. And that's one thing that you know Puharich had an overlap with this. He had an overlap with this. I mean, it's like so wild, man. It's wild how the world works. It really, really is wild, 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 wild. Um, let's do this. Let's get back into the Council of Nine. I know I touched on it briefly, but we got to talk about this, because if this is something that's being pushed on huge platforms, I can only think that it's going to take place sometime in my lifetime, at least hopefully, praise the Lord, that this blessing happens. But if I can live for another 65 years, that would be awesome. I'm pretty sure when I get past 80, I'm going to regret what I'm saying right now. I'll be like, dude, just get me out of here, dude. Right? Let me go home to the Lord. So, like I said, right, we're going to go through the Council of Nine, and pretty much, what were some of the main messages that they would send to certain people, who was used in these channelings, and what's a core claim, right? With who are the nine. And so the Council of Nine are channelings that were a part of the mid 20th century, and they stemmed from occult and paranormal communications, most closely associated with Puharich, right, along with psychic mediums like Phyllis Schlemmer and Uri Geller. Real quick, just a little bit about these people. Uri Geller, right? He was an Israeli British performer and self-proclaimed psychic, best known for popularizing the bending of spoons in his acts on television in the 1970s. He was blends stagecraft with claims of psychokinesis and telepathy. He became one of Israel's first global celebrities and remains a polarized figure in popular culture. He was born in Tel Aviv, and he was an illusionist, right? He was an actor. He liked to go on TV a lot. He was married to Hannah Geller, and yeah, I mean, just some interesting stuff about that gentleman there. Also, Phyllis Schlemmer, right? Like I mentioned just before him, She was an American psychic medium and author best known for channeling the Council of Nine, a purported group of high-level spiritual entities said to communicate universal wisdom. There's the word wisdom. I'm telling you, the goddess is wrapped in this too. Just hang on a second. Hang on a second. Oh, it is. Oh, my boy. What up, Travis? What's up, man? Good to see you, bro. Appreciate you tuning in, man. Appreciate you tuning in. It's always good. Travis Carpenter in the house, everybody. Love that guy. So like I was saying, right, like these sessions were recorded primarily between the 1950s and the 1970s and later compiled in works like The Only Planet of Choice. So some core claims, right, with who the nine are, right? The Council of Nine described themselves as nine cosmic intelligences or beings. They existed beyond physical reality. They were acting as overseers or guardians of the earth and sometimes associated with ancient Egyptian deities. Right. I want to look up this right here because I looked it up the other night. So council, octopus council. Do you guys remember that from the episode I had Seth on? Dan Tufall. Council of Nine, Egypt gods. Let's roll this out. Let's see what let's see. So no, that's not it. What's going on here? Council of Nine, not Nicaea. That's so funny how that kind of popped up. That is so funny. All right. Let me bring this up to the stage real quick. Forgive my slowness. Hope everyone's having a great night. Great night. I'm having fun, yo. I'm having fun. I am having fun. It's dangerous when you're having fun. So the Ennead, right, or Council of Nine, was a pivotal group of nine deities in ancient Egyptian mythology centered on the Heliopolitan creation myth, led by the sun god Atum Ra. The group traditionally includes Shu, which is for air, Tefnut, moisture, Geb, earth, Nut, sky, or Nut, Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys, or what's also known as Horus. Okay, I've actually researched that too, and actually it might say that down here somewhere. Horus could be one of these. I just have to. Where is it? Maybe I read that somewhere else. Hey, there's our girl. There's our girl Hathor. There she is. Yeah, so it's interesting, right? This one Isis, we've talked about a lot. And so I don't know. I mean, what do y'all think? Y'all think, the nine is even a real thing? If it is a real thing, I mean, what does it look like in our reality in the future? Because I have a feeling like this is coming. I do. I just have some sort of feeling. If the nine could be like what Matthew 24 maybe says that are false Christs, that's an interesting take on this. I don't fully know, and it doesn't have to be anything part of scripture. Like this could all just be fable, right? This could all just be illusion. This could all be just fake. To ultimately get humanity to kind of access their own self-awakening, their own self-realization that they're gods, and follow the Antichrist, right? Who's going to probably confirm a covenant with the many, and also, maybe lead people into another false promise. Who knows? Interesting. Just wanted to kind of throw that up there, share that with y'all, because that's something that I looked up the other day and I found it very interesting, because the law of one connects to it as well, right? The concept of the divine council governing or balancing So this is how the law of one pretty much connects to what we just went through. While distinct from the modern law of one channeled material, the concept of a divine council governing or balancing the world aligns with the idea of a unified higher spiritual structure. So, like, think of like source. Like all of these together can become like a source, but they're not the ultimate source. There's like maybe one just above them that hasn't revealed himself yet. Um, which could be it could be old mommy. Who knows? I'm just theorizing here, right? I'm just theorizing. Just theorizing. But but that's pretty much the core claims of who the nine are. They've often spoken a collective voice, right? We're talking about literally people channeling in a room where they're all saying the same thing in unison together, saying, "We are nine, we are one." So there you go. The nine are one. And that's a quote directly from, Phyllis Schlemmer, who's one of these people that have channeled the nine. Okay, and there's been many other channelers that have said the same thing. Then again, it could be something that they're copying, but then again, some of these people don't know each other. Main messages from the channelings are that humanity is being guided, right? The nine claim Earth is a part of a larger cosmic system, that humanity is not alone, but part of a broader intelligence network. They presented themselves as mentors guiding human evolution. All right, I'm going to pull this up for everybody here too. I need to connect this with Gnosticism because it's very important. Um, so, okay, I'm going to throw this up on the screen because this is a Gnostic. This has something to do with the Gnosticism, right? So in Gnosticism, like I said, this council sounds like in Gnosticism what's known as aeons, right? Aeons are divine emanations, radiant immaterial forces or living qualities like mind, truth, and life, originating from the unknowable God. That's what I was talking about there. That there is source. And I think that that's what's coming after this. The law of one is something to focus your philosophies and your religion on, but then the source is what will be, in my opinion, the mother of the gods, the harlot. That pop. So from the unknowable God, the monad, the populate, the pleroma, divine fullness. They function as guides and intermediaries, helping human sparks of divinity break free from the material world created by the imperfect demiurge by imparting gnosis. There you go. And that's exactly what's happening with these Council of Nine. The Council of Nine is serving exactly what this is saying. They are literally functioning as guides and intermediaries, helping human sparks of divinity break free from the material world created by the imperfect demiurge. Now, demiurge in Gnosticism is what is known as the God of the Old Testament. Okay. And what Gnostics say about the New Testament is that Jesus is an ascending master, that Jesus is someone of gnosis, that understood the gnosis and used it to go back with what's known as the monad, the unknowable God. That is damnable heresy. And I forgive those out there that have believed it and that may still believe it, but run away from that. Run away from that like it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy running after you. Okay, because that's basically what that is. So I hope I'm making some sort of point here because I mean, that's what's going on. That is what's going on. So they've they've often implied, right, this Council of Nine, right? They've often implied that human history has been influenced, right, by higher beings, that certain individuals are prepared or chosen to receive knowledge. That there's a human evolution that's to come upon mankind, even the in so much that it's all one linear path of evolution, beginning to end. When the race started to when you finish, and that ultimately humans are described as evolving toward a higher consciousness, right? The nine, have also emphasized that awakening is part of this process, coming to this conscious enlightenment, expanding awareness beyond the physical body, right? Even some sessions would suggest genetic or external influences on humanity's origins. There you go. That's where you get, I think, what's called panspermia or the ancient astronaut theory. One or the other, don't matter. It's all kind of wrapped around that whole UFO cult thing. But extraterrestrial involvement with the nine is that the nine spoke of non-human intelligences interacting with Earth. They've described, different civilizations beyond Earth, contact with humans in ancient times, sometimes framed as watchers or teachers, not always physical in the traditional sense. And this is why I get very cautious of some of the things we've, even as Christians, what's been presented to us in the last 5, 6, 8, 10 years. We're kind of getting fed the same story here biblically. I'm not throwing out the Genesis 6 event, but I think we need to really critically think about the Genesis 6 event, and we need to figure out if that was part of Satan's plan to purposely come and do, to initiate the world into a false awakening, to ultimately turn to him, to worship him as God. Okay, think of you're Lucifer, and you're the most cunning of them all, and you have a legion that follows you. So ultimately, you're the one making all the decisions. People are coming to you, going, Captain, what do we do? I guarantee that he said, I want you guys to go down there, copulate with human women. You're going to develop a Nephilim race. There's going to be offspring that are going to be abominations. And evil they will be very evil, very materialistic, very kingdom oriented, and very dominion powered. And with this, I, Lucifer, will go down and act as the light, and I will act as something that will save humanity out of those strongholds. And ultimately, he is the good and the evil, right? And to me, that's what I think he was trying to do. And he couldn't get there and do it yet because God destroyed the earth. He destroyed it with a flood. The cataclysm happened. Because that's what the Atlantean mysteries are doing. They're blaming the catastrophe on the fallen angels and the Nephilim, just to dumb it down with how the two groups, compare to one another. And that's what's pushing right now in our world with the narrative. So we've got to be mindful for the tactics of Satan and what he's doing right now. That get ready, he's trying to get into this world to be worshiped as light, as God. And he's coming to be on, I think he's coming to be somewhat righteous, in my opinion. It's all an illusion. He's not really righteous. He's masquerading as it, just like the Bible tells us. And just like the Bible says that his ministers can also do the same exact thing. So we got to pull back that next layer of the fallen angel and Nephilim. You've got to dig deeper than that, and you've got to not be just isolated on that topic. You have to understand that if that is the problem, there will be a reaction and there will come a solution. That's the Hegelian dialectic right there. That's a tactic from Satan himself. Okay. And these entities can come like that, right? Revelation 12, Satan and his angels get cast out of heaven. They come directly to the earth. They're casted to the earth. And I think that they can even just, either personify or through an illusion kind of make themselves look like these Avenger figures. And oh, hey, we're here to help, Earth. We're here to help. Thank goodness y'all have awakened. We're here to help you guys. But guess what? Thanos is coming. Thanos is coming. We've got to do something about this. We have to reach our Kundalini, and we must. I'm just kidding. But the world's going to prepare for. Satan's trying to prepare the world for a war against God. Like, full stop. It don't matter where you're at in the eschatological frame of this. That is going to happen no matter what. That's something we can all, with different perspectives of eschatology, agree on. So, Jesus and his angels are coming. New Jerusalem is coming. Like, it's a real thing. We've got to be mindful of the, not only like this the range of psychosis and psychology that Lucifer can use on humanity, but we also have to be aware to not get tunnel visioned and think that we have just one thing figured out over here. To take a step back and understand Satan's working on this side over here as well. So, I'll get back to the 9. That was a little segment. That was fun, but much needed. The 9 also talked about their ancient Egyptian connection, right? That there were strong links that were made to ancient Egyptian religion. I just went over that. I just showed you all that. The 9 were sometimes equated with what's known as the 9 gods of Heliopolis, right? We just covered that. And their claims included pretty much that ancient Egyptians had knowledge of these beings, that pyramids and temples encoded higher knowledge. And so when you see Matt LaCroix going on Danny Jones's podcast, talking pretty much about the same thing with what these structures and these temples, the Ionis temple, right, in Turkey, you've got the pyramids in Egypt, you've got the megalithic structures in Peru, that this is all part of knowledge here and a higher encoded knowledge. Okay, so this is all falling under the same agenda. Sound frequency and vibration is another thing, right, that they also would channel and to talk about and get information from these entities in the way that, it was a major theme. Reality is based, in their perspective, reality is based on vibration, right? They emphasized on sound as a creative force, that frequencies were influencing consciousness, right? That some sessions included tones, chants, and structured vocalizations. This is interesting because, God did speak things into existence. So there could be something with this, but again, they're trying to look like, in some sort of way, gods here. So Satan can only counterfeit, right? He can only counterfeit, invert, and mimic the things of the Lord. And that's how weak he really is. Consciousness as non-local was something as well that the 9 also were messaging, right, to the channelers. The 9 taught that consciousness is not limited to just the brain. It can actually exist independently of the brain. That ideas align with astral projection, telepathy, and collective consciousness. And I think that that's why we have social media in the range that it's in right now, because it's kind of like a forerunner to this kind of idea of collective consciousness and interconnection and entanglement, and yada yada yada. But there was ethical and spiritual teachings that the 9 promoted, that their guidance often included unity of humanity. Aha, there it is. You got the unity. The unity is there. Unity is like the poop stain of Satan. Okay, he farts too much, just check the underwear. Unity is right there. Right? I'm telling you. Basically, unity of humanity, but moving beyond fear and division, responsibility in using knowledge, and warning against misuse of power. Now, what's being talked about here is what I call the Tower of Babel 2.0. Like the Tower of Babel 2.0 is unity of humanity. Let's come together as one, the law of one. We're going to come together and we're going to use our powers together, and we're going to build a tower to reach the heavens, and we're going to go to war with God. And we're going to use these hidden potentials that are a part of humanity to manipulate the metaphysical world into the subphysical world, and we're going to be able to do things that are supernatural. It's wild. It ain't going to just be about bending spoons like, Geller. They're going to be like it could possibly get to some point in the future. Hopefully I'm dead, but it's going to get to where like a Super Saiyan Dragon Ball Z Kamehameha, right? Like that, I feel, is going to happen. I don't know, but it's so funny. Jesus comes and just like destroys them with the sword, with the words of his mouth. All dead. It's sad. Come to the Lord. But all right, I digress. However, these teachings of the nine, they were often mixed with esoteric language, and hierarchical cosmic authority structures. The only planet of choice concept that they talked about was from later material, right? Earth is described as a unique testing ground. You'll hear pretty much Bob Lazar kind of talk about the same thing, and he's kind of in on the same agenda, the same narrative. And he'll say that he was given some documents that he read in his briefing before he went to S4, before he went to the Papoose Lake mountain range and went and worked on the sports model UFO, that he was told, and what he read pretty much was that Earth was like a container of souls. And that kind of, is like the same thing of what we're talking about here with Earth is described as a unique testing ground, right? It's basically more demiurge propaganda, all right, being fed to humanity. Also, the nine said that humans supposedly have free will, unlike other beings, and that this makes Earth very significant, that it's spiritually significant and a place of decision and transformation. So just like Jesus says that he knocks at the door, and that that it's up to us to allow him in, it's kind of like that on the flip side for the other team here, right? It's all at the end of the day, it's a decision. It's narrow road versus wide and broad road to destruction, narrow road to truth, wide to death. And what Jesus is saying there, what he means by wide, is that just so many people, the world is going that way. The world is taking that journey. And it's sad. But it is what it is. Only a remnant, really understand and know and love the truth. You know what I mean? So that's a little bit of the nine. I wanted to go through that. I wanted to get through some of that. Obviously, I can sit here, pretty much chat and talk about it all day. Not all day. I'm just kind of getting bored of it, dude. I got inspired to do this show literally to probably what time is it? I got inspired to do this show probably around 2 p.m. Eastern. I got inspired around 2 p.m. Eastern today. And maybe took like 30 minutes to prepare for this episode, but it's something that I've talked about, I've known about a little bit, so I kind of knew off the top of my head how I can roll and navigate through this episode. What's interesting about today, right, is today was like the first day of actually working on moving my stuff over to my property and my home that's getting built. And so that is a blessing. And if anyone has any wants to pray for me, just pray for the house, pray for it to get done this week, pray for us to be able to move in this weekend, and so I can actually pick up my family up over my shoulders and praise the Lord and just say that, Lord, you did it. You got us through one of the hardest, most rough spiritual and physical experiences that I've ever gone through in my entire life, and hope maybe that that's like the last of it. And that it's all fun and games from here, and that that the rejoicing in the Lord after this whole process, I am not there yet. We're like 99.5% there. We're just not there yet, and I can taste it. I haven't gotten that full feeling of like it's done, so I'm almost there. And I was listening to the Danny Jones podcast while working my tail off today and moving boxes and cleaning and doing all this stuff and all that stuff. I mean, it wore me out, and I really wasn't going to do a show tonight. I was just going to crash it in. And but I was like, you know what? I got to do a show. I got to talk about this. This is a good prep for the coming episode that I want to do with the guys from NDS on this show. Because I just would love to talk about the topic once more and at least get my thoughts out there to those guys, because this stuff is happening. And I think that it's a freight train from hell that you can't stop. Now, I can only do one thing. I can only give awareness. I can only give awareness of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I can only give awareness to others out there that if you're teeter-tottering on making a decision for the Lord, run to him. Run to him, run to him, run to him. I understand the intimidation. I understand that you may be nervous, scared. You may have fear in your heart for some reason, and that's okay, because this is a big deal, right? Like the gospel is a big deal. Our lives are a big deal. Breathing and our heart pumping is a big deal. And really, at the end of the day, that stuff can all close out when we don't know the time. Like, we don't know the time. I'll tell you right now, from my personal experience, I've seen people in their worst moments, and the regret that is on their face with their own doubt is incredible. It's incredible. And maybe that's why, maybe people in my field, maybe people in the death industry, I'll just call it, seem to have, we all kind of seem pretty okay with having a relationship with Jesus Christ. Right? Like, we all do, right? Like, not all of us, but the majority of us do. And for the crowd out there that isn't, they're still all right with it. Like, come on, how can you not be all right? We're over here seeing dead people on the reg, and it's just, we get it. Like, life is random. Boom, like a vapor. Goodbye. And it's tough. Whatever. Like, that's life. That is life. And it sucks. It sucks, right? It's not what we were created for. Something happened. I know for sure something happened. The serpent came in and caused this stuff to happen. Now, there is responsibility. And I take responsibility for being a sinner. I take responsibility for even regretting things that I know I shouldn't have done. And I fall into that Romans verse where it's like, I do what I don't want to do, but I still do it. And I just pray that I have enough time to go out to others and seek their forgiveness for the things that I've done to them, and to clean the slate, right? To clear the air with people. And it's important to do that. It's even important to forgive people, right? Which is probably one of the most hardest things to ever do. Like, I don't even, if I was like, how can I forgive my builder who stole $85,000 from me? That's a lot of money. That's loan money. It's like, it's not money that I actually had, but it's money I'm going to have to pay off. And I don't know how to, I really don't know how to forgive someone for doing that, to trying to hurt me, my wife, my little daughter, from us getting what God wants for us. And that's the thing. That's why I've seen how great God is and how he's literally walked me and well, he's more like dragged me through this, but I hung on. I hung on. It was not easy, but it was more like he was dragging me, because I was just too beat up. And I just knew if I hang on to him, he's going to get me through it. And I'm telling you, that is real. And I've lived through the test. I've failed the test. Let's just get that right. Like him dragging you through it is, in my opinion, like failing the test. You're supposed to kind of walk with him through that. But it's all right because it's very fruitful in the end of it all. And I think we're supposed to fail sometimes. Like I do. I think it's okay to fail. It's part of getting forged by the Lord. And so I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to talk about the Council of Nine, not in the way that others may take it. Right? I'm here. I'm happy to expose it. I'm happy to get the gospel of Jesus Christ out there because we're sinners and we need it. We're sinners and we need it. There is no other way but Jesus Christ. And I have a lot of fun with this show. I have a lot of fun with the guests. I have a lot of fun with the audience. Let's go. If y'all play such a big part in my life, it's not even funny. God has blessed me with a great crew. Y'all are like my crew. It's not that I'm the leader of the crew. The Lord's the leader. But we're all on the same school bus here, and it's fun. And the Lord's driving, and he's got some good tunes on, and we're hanging out, and we're just we're shouting the gospel out to other buses. That's all we're doing. And if it's something that I can continue to do for the rest of my life, I will do it. And I just wanted to say I thank you, each and every one of you, on the YouTube platforms, on the Patreon platforms, on the audio platforms, the people getting through the ad space, the people getting through the things that are rough to kind of get through with how to support this show. But I want you to know I love you. Like, I love you. You know what I'm saying? And let's do it. Let's keep it rolling. I'm going to try and do the show every day that I'm off. We'll see how long my endurance allows me to go to do that. But I'm having fun. I'm having fun working on exposing these things, not only through a biblical lens, but trying to actually expose these things. Like, we need to reprove and rebuke each other as well, which I've gotten emails as well about people getting on to me a little bit, and I like it. So shout out to everyone who decides to reach out to me with whatever it is on their heart through email and all this. I read it. I get to it. I may not be able to get back to you in time. A lot of these emails are pretty long. It takes just, it takes the wind out of me a little bit by reading through it, but I get through it. And I tell you what, I appreciate it. We're here to sharpen each other. We're here to be better women and men of God. And so let's do it. All right. We're all hitmen out here. All right. And I mean that for both sexes. So listen, that's it. That's a wrap. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. And this was a lot of fun. If anyone wants to support the show, be sure to head on over to patreon.com/the biblical hitman, folks. Get all of your ad-free early access, direct chats, group chats over there. We got a cool growing community over there. Also, if anyone wants to support the YouTube channel, just come on over, The Biblical Hitman, hit that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends, and comment down below. Even if it's just a one letter, YouTube sees it as a comment, so it helps the video. If we can get these videos out to more people, we can get people to come to the Lord. That is the Great Commission. And that's something I'm going to try and work on more and more with the podcast. Also, come support the show on audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, pretty much anywhere you can consume your audio content, music, wherever. Type in The Biblical Hitman and you'll find me there. You'll find the show. And, while you're there, hit a follow, hit a review, hopefully a good one. It also helps the show as well. But I just want to thank Cindy. What's up, Morpheus? What's up, Bacon? What's up, Dunt? What's going on? I know I was really just so hyper focused on this show to get a lot of information out there, and I think I did. But thank you, Josh. Thank you, Travis, and I appreciate your brother, man. I thank you everyone for tuning in. Blue, good to see you. Josh again, Heat Seeker. Let's go. We got an awesome crew here. We really do. We got a jam up crew. That's what I'm saying. And it's not just me here sitting here talking in front of a camera. I'm not working alone. I'm working with you folks, and y'all are working with me, and I love it. And we're all here together. And the Lord's got the reins on this one. But thank you, everybody. Much love. I hope everyone has a great night, and I will see you next time.